I'm Martha Crozier Wood, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about my uncle, Lloyd McKinley Crooks, who was killed in World War I. He was a private in the Marines. He had volunteered to join the Marines. I guess one of the sad things for me is to think about the fact that he was only 21 years old when he died, which is exactly the same age as my eldest grandson is now. He apparently was a very well-liked, intelligent young man. He had gone through university. He was teaching school, rural one-room school in Canada. And I think probably the lure of going into the military and being back among other people his age was probably one of the factors, as well as his pride in the United States. He was living, his parents had moved to Canada to a farm. He was off someplace else. He was amongst people he hadn't known before. He was apparently quite gregarious from everything that other people wrote about him, told some of my much younger uncles about him. He first tried to become part of the Air Force, which was a very fledgling thing at the time. But he had broken his wrist as a young man cranking a car to get it started, and the wheel flew back and broke his wrist, and he didn't qualify. So he was not eligible for that, and he went back again and enlisted in the Marines. He went to France in in August of 1918. He was supposed to go into battle early in September. He wrote his grandparents a letter, which they did keep, and he said that he was feeling very badly that he did not get to go into battle at that time because he had come down with the chicken pox. And when he finally did go into battle, it was in the Saint Michel sector near a place called Therencourt, I believe is the pronunciation. And he was killed in that very first battle. And, you know, any death in a family has a very big impact on that family. Not only his mother had been very proud of him going to the military, had bought her much younger sons little military outfits for them to wear. When Lloyd was killed, she burned those outfits, and they were never allowed to talk about war again, which is hard on little boys, and they were really little boys still at the time. It had a great impact on the family. Even my mother, who was closest to him in age, but 5 or 6 years younger, growing up, we were never allowed to talk about World War I. We were never allowed to ask questions. And when we'd see a picture of him, and there are lots of pictures of him, and you would say, "Who is that?" And that was something you weren't supposed to do. So one always wonders what would have happened if he had lived, how things would have turned out differently. His parents, he was originally buried at Saint Michel area in France, which was the thing to do at the time, to bury a person where they died. A few years later, they rethought that and took his body back to his hometown, which was a very small town, Altoona, Kansas. And I have seen the grave. It's just a grave. When I was a child. And we always say, this person will always be remembered. Well, you know, the name is around. The University of Kansas, he was a graduate of the University of Kansas, has a memorial student union to the First World War soldiers. And yes, his name is on a plaque outside the door. But whoever stops and reads those plaques? But I still think of him from time to time, even though I never knew him. And that is my story, and that is the story of Lloyd McKinley Crooks.